From famous poems to foundational Gothic horror novellas and Japanese anthology films, there are many works of media that have been inspired by dreams. In this video, I'm going to explore 5 different works that were inspired by dreams or nightmares. In 1984, Canadian filmmaker James Cameron released the science fiction film The Terminator, about a cybernetic android being sent back in time to kill the mother of a future resistance leader, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator, Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, and Michael Biehn as Kyle Reese. When the film was released, it received mixed reviews. However, in modern times it's considered a cult classic. While in Rome, during the release of his first movie, Piranha 2: The Spawning, James Cameron had a fever dream that would become the inspiration for the film. In an interview, Cameron said, "The Terminator came from a dream that I had while I was sick with a fever in a cheap pensione in Rome in 1981. It was the image of a chrome skeleton emerging from a fire. When I woke up, I began sketching on the hotel stationery. The first sketch I did showed a metal skeleton cut in half at the waist, crawling over a tile floor, using a large kitchen knife to pull itself forward while reaching out with the other hand. In a second drawing, the character is threatening a crawling woman. Minus the kitchen knife, these images became the finale of the Terminator almost exactly." In 1797, the English Romantic poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge wrote a poem titled Kubla Khan, A Vision in a Dream. The first stanza of the poem envisions the landscape around Mongol ruler Kublai Khan's summer palace Xanadu, describing it as a pleasure palace, and the second stanza of the poem describes the poet's desire to create his own pleasure palace through song. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who had been sick, had retired to a farmhouse. He had been prescribed opium for his sickness, which made him fall asleep while he was reading a book titled Purchase His Pilgrimage, which had a section about Kublai Khan and his palace Xanadu, the same section he was reading as he fell asleep. He then proceeded to have a vivid dream about Kublai Khan and his palace. When he awoke, he began writing down the dream. However, he was interrupted by a person on business from Porlock, who he spoke to for an hour. When he returned to his room to finish the poem, he only had a vague remembrance of the dream and wasn't able to finish writing it down. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a classic English Gothic horror novella by Scottish author Robert Louis Stevenson. The novella is set in Victorian London, which tells the story of Dr. Henry Jekyll, a scientist, and his alter ego, Mr. Hyde. It explores the themes of the duality of human nature and the struggle between good and evil. The novella actually has a few inspirations. He had always been interested in the idea of good and evil, and his friendships and connections with various people throughout his life. In an essay, Stevenson wrote that after racking his brain for days for a possible plot for the story, he had a dream that gave him 3 scenes and the central idea of a voluntary change becoming involuntary. Stevenson's wife Fanny was quoted as saying, "In the small hours of one morning, I was awakened by cries of horror from Lewis. Thinking he had a nightmare, I awakened him. He said angrily, 'Why did you wake me?' I was dreaming a fine bogey tale. I had awakened him at the first transformation scene." The Adventures of Tintin is a comic created by Belgian cartoonist Hergé, first published in 1929 about Tintin, a young Belgian reporter, and Captain Haddock, a merchant marine sea captain who go on adventures. Tintin in Tibet is the 12th volume of The Adventures of Tintin, where Tintin and Captain Haddock travel to Tibet to rescue his friend Chang, who was in a plane crash after dreaming that his friend is alive. During the period before writing this volume, Hergé would almost always have recurring nightmares. At the time, I was going through a time of real crisis, and my dreams were nearly always white dreams, and they were extremely distressing. I took note of them and remember one where I was in a kind of tower made up of a series of ramps. Dead leaves were falling and covering everything. At a particular moment, in an immaculately white alcove, a white skeleton appeared that tried to catch me, and then instantly everything around me became white. Because of these nightmares, Urji would then be inspired to set his next volume in Tibet. Akira Kurosawa is one of the greatest and most influential directors of all time, and is Japan's most famous filmmaker. He is known for directing films of many genres, and one of these films is titled Dreams. Dreams is an anthology film featuring 8 different vignettes. The film was created with the assistance of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. The vignettes were based on the recurring dreams that Akira Kurosawa had. A few of these vignettes are: on a rainy day, a young boy's mother warns him not to go outside and to not go in the woods, as that is when the foxes have their weddings. He does not listen and ends up drawing the wrath of the foxes. 4 mountaineers are stuck in a blizzard that has lasted for 3 days. 3 of the mountaineers give up and sit down to die. The 4th struggles a bit more to live and ends up meeting the Japanese mythological figure Yuki Onna, the Snow Maiden. A Japanese officer at the end of World War II is walking home. After going through a creepy tunnel, he encounters ghosts from his past. A man is wandering the Japanese wasteland. After a nuclear apocalypse, he meets a demon, which is actually a man who has been mutated due to the radiation and has grown a horn. Have you ever had a dream that inspired you to write a story in some way? If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment and subscribe, and check out one of my other videos.